Hello, it's this particular video that I'm making is just sharing a quick start of a DevOps tool called Ansible, because I was just kind of curious about Ansible and what it is, what it's used for. I mean, I've heard it being used, courses on Pluralsight, Udemy, those kinds of things. So I just thought I would just dive in and dig in a little bit. Linux Academy has several courses on it as well. Being a .NET developer, primarily a web developer recently with React JS and amongst other things on some projects, Ansible is something that I, not really have an opportunity to use. So I just thought I would dig into it. Basically, what I've learned a little bit about Ansible is that it is a tool that is cloud agnostic. It's a DevOps tool per se, but it's not like writing CloudFormation scripts or using code deploy or code pipeline for AWS. Ansible actually runs. You can run it on a standalone server. You can run it in your own intranet, your own network, where you have hosts that are reachable by domain or IP address. So it's the requirements on it are very, very basic. You just need to have the Ansible application, if you will, or service installed on your primary box, the one that you're actually going to be using as your main deploy server, if you will. And all of your other nodes that you're updating or communicating to via SSH don't need to really have the Ansible server running. So it's kind of handy. It uses Python behind the scenes as well as SSH to do all of its pushing of configuration and things of that nature. So long and short of it, and I don't claim to be an expert on this, I'm just kind of wanting to share a little bit of my knowledge on this. You can go to ansible.com and basically see how it works. It's very simple, or they promote it to be very, very simple, and that's one of the main advantage I understand as to why people are using it. So you may ask yourself, what is it used for if you've not used it before, if you don't know much about it, and that's basically the state that I was in. So if you're familiar with, Azure or CloudFormation on AWS, or deploying configuration using Chef or Puppet, Ansible is a tool that pretty much falls into those categories. Only it doesn't require you to have any of your stuff in a particular cloud. You could still use it if you're running all of your stuff on AWS, as long as your endpoints on your instances are reachable. That's basically all you need. So what I've got here, well, before I jump into that, the idea is you can actually have a whole bunch of servers that are very, very similar, like a dev server, a test server, a production server. You could have redundant servers out there that are basically sitting behind load balancers, as long as they have separate IP addresses or host names that are reachable. You can push changes, configuration changes. You can install updates. You can install packages. You can change parameters to your web server if you want. Ansible is basically a tool that lets you do just that. So if you will, like imagine you have a test and a dev and a production server. You could push configuration changes on a few of your applications up there. You can install Nginx. You can configure parameters to Nginx. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. And it's almost like its own little quote-unquote scripting language. It sits behind, or its configuration files are basically YAML, which tends to be really a popular format these days. Like I say, CloudFormation scripts for AWS, they recommend using YAML. Docker Compose files, those are usually written in YAML. The configuration files that you'll find for Kubernetes is using YAML. Basically, if you want to spin up orchestration rules and things of that nature. And Ansible is no different. So as long as you have a decent understanding of YAML and such like that, you're basically good to go on that. So what you can do is go to Ansible.com and read a couple of things. I'm just going to show you a super quick demo on some of the things that I've been playing around with. So I actually have a virtual box. Well, it's actually Hyper-V's, and I've installed Ubuntu on it. So I have a Windows 10 system for the most part. And I also created basically a Ubuntu server instance up using my DigitalOcean account. It's a convenient way to spin up multiple instances, and you basically have Unix at your fingertips, in this case Ubuntu. So I just kind of wanted to give you a super quick rundown of some of the things that you can do with Ansible. If you look here, here's my actual instance. It's a instance that I have up there in the cloud, if you will, using DigitalOcean. So it's a great way, again, to create Unix, Linux distributions, run a bunch of tests on it, and then you can actually shut down and destroy your server, and it's very, very economical. If you look on this one, basically, I'm going to demonstrate just installing the telnet package on this box here. If you run telnet, you can see that it says no such file or directory. It is my little DigitalOcean droplet basically in my account. And what I'm going to do is just show you how to install telnet and what you would do. So basically here is my, if you will, my in-house server, deployment server, if you will, if you want to just imagine it that way. And like I said, it's just for demonstration purposes. Ansible will let you actually define and group your servers into logical groupings, and what you can do is you can run commands directly, or you can go ahead and run a thing known as a playbook, which basically is kind of like a script that'll run a whole bunch of commands for you, deployment from start to finish, and it does actually have some language constructs similar to if-else statements with handlers, things of that nature. So I'm not even going to attempt to go into those deep dives. I just kind of wanted to just give you a super high-level overview of what this thing is. So when you install Ansible, you are going to basically, let's see here. One of the first things you're going to want to do is an Etsy Ansible host. This is basically where you can create logical groupings here. So this is kind of like your Etsy host file that you're all familiar with, but this is for Ansible itself. So what I'm doing here is I'm declaring, telling Ansible that anytime you see a name by DigitalOcean-test, here's one of the machines, one or many, like in this example, I only have one, but here's one of the IPs, and it just so happens to be this IP here, and in my droplet out there in the cloud. So just imagine if you had something, like this, where you had, you could say, you could have a bunch of prod servers, with a different set of IPs or even host names. So it doesn't really, it could be a .com. What I wanted you to know is you can have a bunch of servers inside of the one grouping. So in your playbook, or if you're running commands against this grouping name, it's actually going to execute those commands across all 5 of these servers. So that's very important to understand. For the most part, this is not a one-to-one. In my example here, it just happens to be a one-to-one, but it's only because I'm kind of lazy and I only wanted to create one DigitalOcean droplet instead of a bunch of them. But just keep that in mind, as you can have as many of these groupings as you want. And what this basically here is I'm overriding anytime you use this group here. If I were to use, if I were to install the Apache 2 server, which I was running some tests on there, instead of user bin Python, you know, which is a default, I was just basically telling it to use Python 3. So anyways, I just wanted you to be aware that there is a Etsy Ansible host file that you would set up, you know, all of your hosts and some of the rules inside of there. Looks like I am logged in as user Ansible, and I created that file as root, so I couldn't update it anyways, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. So for the next step, I'm going to basically show you there's two different ways that you can run commands. That's using the Ansible, shall we say, command, but there's a whole bunch of commands. One is you can do it from the command line, which is what I'm going to show you right here, and the other one is you can do it from a playbook. So those are two key concepts. From the command line, what I just wanted you to see here is I just wanted to confirm, you know, we don't have telnet installed. So here's a command that will actually remove it if you do have it installed. So you just give it the name, which is Ansible. This DigitalOcean test is what you saw earlier up here in the host file, which is this one right here. And when it sees that DigitalOcean test, it's going to say, oh, I'm going to run this command on all of my servers that happen to fall under that grouping name of DigitalOcean test. In this case, we just have one, which is fine. And then, you know, this is going to run it basically as sudo. And here's a module. So Ansible comes with the -m tag. Ansible comes with a whole set of modules, and what you can do is you can look at the documentation on it. So again, this is a super quick start. Not even going to attempt to get into all the different kinds of modules, so I'll leave that up to you. I'm just going to run the apt module. It's a pre-baked module. Think of it as kind of like a plugin that you can download and piecemeal and pull in. It's kind of like with your CloudFormation scripts, if you want to run like, you know, a ref, or if you want to you know, do something in your scripts, a pre-baked command that's already been run. We're going to go ahead and run the apt since it's Ubuntu. And then here's the name of the, here's basically the name of the package that we're going to install. So this A is like for add for the apt, and we're going to add the telnet package, and we're just going to actually say with the state absent, we're going to say remove it if it exists. So I know it seems kind of weird with the A command here, but you can set state to installed and other things here. What this actually did is it actually SSH'd into this remote server, and it uninstalled telnet. Granted, it's not installed here, but I'll show you the example when we run it again. So that was an example of running Ansible command alone, if you will. And what I'm going to do here is I have been kind of playing around a little bit with some of these files here, trying to remember which one actually does the telnet, and it's this one right here. So here is a YAML file that Ansible understands, processes, and like I keep saying CloudFormation scripts because that's just something that I used to work with, still kind of do here and there, but it's a YAML file, and this is a playbook. And what this basically is doing here is these are all reserved, and there's a whole bunch more that you can list in your documentation. You can set up variables right here, which is similar to your parameters in your CloudFormation scripts. So I'm creating a variable called myhost, which is equal to DigitalOcean test. Gather is a pre-baked, it is a command that tells Ansible to gather up as many facts as possible from the server itself. And by doing that, you know, we've got the gather facts, shall we say, target right here. Gather facts will allow you could dump that up, but it'll allow you to see all the different things that it can find out, and that Ansible can actually extract and find out about the particular server that it's running on. And so you can dynamically see what you can query and what you can install and what kinds of things you can do on a server. For this example, I didn't really need to do yes, but you know, I just got it there because I was just kind of checking out some of the debugging thing here. Here's a remote user. Basically, I created a user called Ansible on my local Ubuntu as well as my remote server. And you can set it up such that you won't be prompted for a password when you run the commands. And so there's some documentation on how to do that if you're interested. And all I'm really doing here is using variable substitution. So I'm just saying use all of the hosts that are in this group right here, create that assign that to hosts, run this playbook, if you will, under user Ansible. And yes, we do want to become that user, and we do it by using sudo, because there's different ways you can do it depending on which platform. Because again, you can run Ansible on Windows, you can run it you know, on Ubuntu and some other flavors where they might not have a sudo. So that's why these are all kinds of flexible. There's different ways you can connect. So here in this case, we're going to use SSH. And the main thing here is we're going to install Telnet. And so we're just creating a variable called PKG. We can call this anything we want, but we're assigning it to Telnet. Here's the biggie. Tasks is something that Ansible recognizes, and it says, oh, I'm going to run these. You can have a bunch of these tasks and all that, but we're going to give it a name of install the software. And, you know, we're just using the apt task, which is, you know, for Ubuntu. Now, if you're running this on another flavor of Linux, for example, instead of using apt, you'd probably use yum, which is another package installer. But anyways, that's a different story. And we're just saying install this package, which is Telnet, and grab the latest version, which is your state variable. So let's go ahead and run this playbook. And as you can see, I'll just confirm again that, oh, let's see here. We got my DigitalOcean console. There we go. Just wanted you to see we don't have Telnet, and this is our IP address. Now, in order to run that playbook, we go ahead and run the Ansible Playbook command. So we have variable test.yaml. And we'll go ahead and give that a shot. As you can see here, it is actually going through this file, processing it, and it's going to be installing the Telnet package onto this remote box. It says that it's okay. And if I go back here, as you can see where it says no such file or directory, if I type in Telnet again, lo and behold, we have it installed there. So now let's go ahead and uninstall it. As you can see, here's the play recap. Now let's just go ahead and uninstall it by using this command line thing here. And the key there is state equals absent, which will just basically say we want its end state after this command to be run to be absent. So that's going to go and remote in again to DigitalOcean test, which happens to have this server as a part of its definition. And as you can see here, it went onto the site, it SSH'd in. It's actually doing all this stuff on the box. It's taking a look at it. Says that Telnet will be removed. And now if I try to do Telnet again, it says no such file or directory. So as you can see, this was a quick demo here on just how to use Ansible. Now imagine, if you will, you can script out, you know, you could have a server here that scripts out these playbooks. You can run them from cron. You can also, you know, with Ansible, you can actually add cron entries to all of your remote servers through playbooks by using the cron module. There's a whole ton of modules. I don't claim to know, you know, any of them, if you will, but I'm just kind of throwing that out to you. Let's see, there's one other thing here that I wanted to mention too as well. So here's an advanced concept, if you will, of Ansible. I actually have a playbook that installs Nginx on Ubuntu, which Nginx is just the web server, similar to Apache and Tomcat and things of that nature. But Ansible actually has the concept, and I kind of got this trick from the Linux Academy Quick Start, which I recommend. It's you can log into Linux Academy, create your account, and there is a Quick Start free course on Ansible, and that's kind of where I learned a little bit about this here. But it has the concept of handlers, and handlers are kind of like an if-else statement. But for this given example, imagine, if you will, what this playbook is doing is this will install Nginx on servers that already have it installed. If not, then, you know, actually, I'm sorry, let me back that up. If the server already has Nginx, it won't install it. If it doesn't have Nginx, it will install it. I apologize for my confusing statement there. So the way to do that is it'll install and it'll also restart the service. And the way to do that is you want to have a handler that just basically says, okay, after the service has been installed, we're going to go ahead and you know, start up the service. You know, in that case. And why would we want to do that? So the example that they had was, or why would we not want to do that in all cases, even if you had it installed? And the example that they had was, for the most part, if you have people using the web application under Nginx at a site, and this happens to be running in a cron job, and it happens to be targeting a particular machine out there that actually does have Nginx installed, even though the other ones in that group don't have it installed, you don't necessarily want to restart the server that has it installed, because it could actually affect users who are using your web application. So in order to handle that particular situation, they have the concept of a handler, and the key is the notify. So if you look here, what we're doing here, this is pretty much the same information. We're going to install Nginx on all of the DigitalOcean-test hosts, which I only have one, if you will. And what we're going to do is we're going to install Nginx, the latest version. And the key here is this notify. See this right here? This actually has to match the name of the handler, word for word, character for character. So you can call this anything you want. It just has to match. And the nice thing is you can even make it as a sentence right here. So the way this works is, if you're on a server, or if Ansible is connecting to a server that already has Nginx installed, this notify will not be called. And because it won't be called, then you don't have to worry about this restart occurring, bringing down users who are visiting your web app on that site. This notify only gets called if this package actually got installed. And so that's kind of the way this works. So, and that's due to the latest right here. So there's some logic behind the scenes. You know, state can be a bunch of variables, values, if you will. Latest is one of them. So I just wanted you to be aware that you can use handlers to have like if-else constructs and things of that nature. Is there anything else that I wanted to mention? Yeah, there's a debug one. And what you can do here is, if you actually wanted more information about what you're doing, let's go ahead and run this, because this is going to install the telnet package again. Make sure that it's not there. Here's basically a debug target. And what we're doing here is, when you run the install apt telnet, here's another reserved keyword, register, which it's going to, you know, say we want to register the result that comes from running this command here. And we are going to use the debug task, if you will, or module. It's actually the debug task, and it's going to dump out more information. So let's go ahead and run that. So we want to go ahead and run the playbook, which would be debug.yaml. If I can type. So now it's running that playbook. So you got your task. And when we ran this earlier, we didn't get all this output. So as you can see right here, it's actually showing you this debug task and what it's returning. And if you look here, the debug task is using this guy right here. And that's what is happening here. And the reason why you're getting all of this information here is because we went ahead and registered our result from this task right here. So there's a whole bunch of things, you know, what I want to do here was just kind of plant a seed in your head that, you know, you can have conditional logic, you can dump out additional information, you know, in case you have scripts that need to grep out values from here in order to execute other scripts if they're successful, things of that nature. You know, there's quite a bit of flexibility. It's not just a file that says, you know, do this. It's kind of a set of commands that say do this, but you can say but only do that under other certain situations. And the key is in the modules that, you know, certain modules that Ansible will be using that you can pull in. They all have different features and things that you can do with them. So that's where reading up on the documentation would really help. I apologize. I think I rambled on too much here, but I just kind of wanted to see, you know, what Ansible was all about and maybe share some of my knowledge. And, you know, at least if you watch this video, you don't expect anybody to be an expert, neither am I, but at least now if somebody brings up, you know, hey, what about Ansible? Can we use that or whatever? You'll have an idea of what it is and why it's another important tool in the tool chest for DevOps capabilities and features. So thank you for watching, and hope you have a great one. Thanks again.